I'm going to do a couple off the hump, and then if I have enough left, which I know I will. This is a lot of clay, actually. Too much for what we're doing. I don't even know if I have all my supplies on me or not. We shall see. Well, Mackenzie got back in the flow fast, didn't she? Just come in and make a bowl, like no big deal. Ooh, that's gonna be too much. I can probably use this next class period too. Okay, so let's just center the top part of this and do a couple off the hump. So it doesn't take much, you know, just a little bit centered. And drop a hole. About a knuckle down is where I am. Pull this open in just a bit. So my bottom is right like there. So as long as I go below that. Now, pretty soon here, I pull back my speed because it's just a smaller trip around that center, right? This takes a while. That whole orbiting thing with planets comes in mind here. So I can go a decent amount slower here and still have it traveling plenty fast enough. So from here, I'm just going to pretty quickly here start my pull in toward the center, okay? Because it's going to need to go there anyway. The moment you drift and you got to start choking, things get kind of crazy. So pretty early, just force yourself to kind of start pulling towards center, pulling towards center. Then you come and you can even begin this process here. Push that process a bit more with choking and coning with your full hand. You can also, when it gets smaller, do this deal, kind of like that, and let the flat part of your knuckle and your middle finger touch while you're coming in. Or maybe this feels more comfortable, you can do that 6-finger touch. But this is all, and even a 2, just whatever feels good. Those are typical though, those are your moves, right? So when you pull in, the wall gets thicker. So then you do another pull, or 2. Still trying to keep it wet. And more choking. And I will say almost immediately, you see that rim, my guess is that rim's pretty wonky already, isn't it? Something about this narrowness, it's going to require a lot of chopping, or sort of at the very end chopping. You don't want to go crazy with how much you cut because you want the width, the height on your neck to be there, but just know it's going to get like that pretty quick. So it's really just repetition of that. All these things, you know, you're choking in so it gets thicker. You're coming down in and pulling so it gets thinner. And just keep an eye on that shape, depending on what you want from the beginning. There's a book on the shelf up there above the pug mill called 500 Teapots. That if you want to get some ideas on shapes for spouts, it's up there. There's also one 500 cups, 500 vases. I don't know. It's a neat series, and sometimes that helps you get an idea of what you want to go for. You can even go with your pinky in there if you need to. I would say before you get too far, maybe even sooner than what I did, You know, I would get in there with your rib occasionally and take some of this slip off, especially when it's a full bottle. I'm just doing a spout right now because the bottle, the outward part here will get really, not necessarily narrow, but it'll gather up slip and it'll want to sit right on that little outward movement. And if you keep this dry, it'll help it support the inside while you're doing it. That may be it. You know, that may be, that's kind of a nice looking spout actually. At the very end, if you need to trim that rim off, go ahead and do that. Usually your last move is going to be this pull in because it's going to get a little wider when you stick your finger in there. So just sort of get in the habit of like my last move is going to be that, probably. You can do this last little rim trim. Maybe, you know, a little sponge touch or a chamois touch there, just to round that off a bit. That last little bit of slip off of there. With a sponge or a rib. And we're going to cut it off. I think, do I have another bat? I don't have another bat. Sophie, would you grab me one? Or just one off the table? Okay, so keep a bat handy. Get your needle tool ready. And we're just going to come in, just like you're cutting off a lid, you know, you're going to come in here and you can go a decent amount under, or you can just know that you're getting into the above the bottom part. Same. This is not imperative that this be nice and flat, but it can be if you want it to. And then really clean, dry hands. I just don't want to take time to do it. Just going to pull this off. Set it there and make another one. Now that one's got a little bit of water in it, so really it's actually better to have it be a bottomless. I'm going to make this next one to make it bottomless because you want that water to get out of there, right? Because if not, it's going to, I don't know, it can cause you trouble. Definitely on a bottle, but not necessarily on the spout. Okay, one more spout. So it's like you're making a knob, making a lid. Down, pulling out, slow wheel down. And pulls. And the choking. I'm pushing over pretty hard on this bottom. Like when my finger is down there, sometimes you got to just push out to get that outward thing there. If you haven't opened wide enough, which I don't really feel like I quite opened wide enough, so push it out and then let it rise a bit, and then you start your push back in. And you can always straighten that out with the choke here. They're really fun. I just think they're kind of mesmerizing. Have either of you tried bottles yet? Yeah. Okay. I think you're going to love it. I love them. And you can make little tiny ones off the hump like this, like, and actually have a bottom and the whole nine. But I just wanted to show you that you don't have to. And I may demo one here real quick that's the rest of this clay and make a bottle with an actual bottom. It just takes some practice. I'd say the main thing is on those first couple pulls, just don't get too open. Don't get too bullish. At least be vertical if not in. Okay, so I'm going to purposefully cut this one off a little bit with that bottom showing, just to get you that. I think that would do it right there. Yep. I think I did it. Let's see if I can. Yeah. So when that happens, it's going to have a little bit of movement to it. And just know you can fix that later, like if it gets a little wonky. So you totally bottomless. And there they are. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so I'll do one more. Just to show you like more of the bottle, like the whole bottle. I just feel bad using the whole bottom of this. I'm gonna do a bottle off the hump here. And you can turn in a couple little ones, like it doesn't have to be some big, massive thing. But we do need to trim it, and I think what I'm gonna do, I think I'm just gonna load a video of a guy trimming instead of taking your time to watch me trim. And basically it's just, you're gonna be narrow on the bottom, and it's gonna come out probably, or it could just be straight up, it doesn't matter. But if it's, no matter what, whatever your shoulder is, that whole thing's gonna get upside down inside something that's gonna hold it. So anything that's on the tables that has something in it is usable. You can take that, not really, I wouldn't use a Garibaldi's cup, I would use something that's like a piece of pottery. Take that piece of pottery, put it on here and center it, lug it on the bottom. Then you flip it upside down, flip your bottle upside down and let it be in there, lug it here. Then you start your trimming, okay? Now, if you can't find anything around that fits well, you might have to come and get some clay like this and throw yourself a chuck, okay? So you would just be throwing something with a hole in it and make it go down, make it go all the way to the bottom like it's a donut and it flares out a bit, that your pots can sit down in. And I'm gonna try to get myself to make a few of those and have them in that damp box over there, so you can just take one with it stuck on a bat. I won't take them off the bat. You just take the bat, set it down, put your pot in there, because if it's leather hard on leather hard, they'll just kind of stick. So you just pop it down in there. I just need to make 3 or 4 different sizes. So if I don't get to do that and pull stuff off the table, or just make your own, you can make your own and use them wet, basically. With not wet. You would take your rib and make it dry wet, if you will. And if you get stuck, I'll show you how to do that. Okay, I'm gonna quit talking and do this. So the only difference I would say in what I'm doing there and what I'm about to do is that I'm just gonna make myself aware of how thick this wall is at the bottom. And I'm going to try my best to mark, to get a feel for where the bottom of this pot is when I'm doing it off the hump. Now if you do it flat on the bat, this is not as big of a deal, but like I feel like that right there is about a ½ inch under where my bottom is. So I'm just going to kind of keep that there. Opening up. Ooh. Does not like that undercut. Oh. It's getting off center. Just trying to open it. I think I'm just going to pull it. So there's my bottom. I'm going to cut there later. There's some of my pulls. This is a really thick wall. I don't really recommend that, but I can't. I've made that so narrow down there that now it's not wanting to handle my opening, so I'm just going to start pulling and hope for the best. So I'm pulling vertically. In a minute I'm going to start to transition over and start to pull more in toward the center as soon as I can. Yeah, see, I can drift a bit toward the center. It's pretty thick right in here. So now I can start to go out. I may just work this underneath till it's done and pretty. It doesn't have to be overly thick, but you can leave it just a little thicker down there so that it will hold everything else up and trim it later. So feel good about that, because here in a minute I'm not going to be able to get all the way down in there. So I've got to just deal with 2 things. I got to get this water out of the inside, like now, And I'm just going to be adding it to my finger, not so much squirting on the rim like I usually do. Just got to make my hands wet, and I got to get this outside wet. All I need is the finger that's inside to be wet. It's almost too dry. Sometimes I'll like get the inside wet with just the wetness of my finger. It's already feeling really thin in that spot right there. Like that's just, whew, it's really precarious because it's got to hold all that weight above it. So I'm going to get back in there and make it dry so that I can add some water on it. Okay, so now let's see if we can get this thing coming in a bit. Ooh, it's dry. Sometimes you got to go low to go in. If you just start going in right above that, it's like there won't be enough clay there. Like if I just started here, there may not be enough there to do what I want. So sometimes if you get down low, then come up through, it does what you need it to do. The whole time I'm doing this, every single time I do that, this wall gets a little thicker, a little thicker, a little thicker. Man, I can't get that sweet spot. Kind of squatty, so I just like treated that like my sponge, you know, get up under there and hold it in while I'm coming up. That just looks way more pleasing to me, right? When you get this part that's the outermost part above halfway, everything looks a little better. It doesn't seem so squatty. How much time do I have? How much? Oh. I was hoping y'all would have enough time to work, but it's going to happen.
You did, friend.
Sorry about that. It's getting pretty thick wall. I'm just kind of ignoring the fact that that rim is kind of wonky because I know I can cut it off later. So since this one I'm not worried about it being a spout, I can go as thin as I want to here. Maybe you want to get it super thin in one spot like here and then let it, you know, kind of branch out at the top. Just whatever. Just all kinds of possibilities. Also sometimes like a little mark here somewhere. Sometimes your tool just does it. See how it started to make a mark right there? Just kind of like those sometimes. It's a little separation. It gives a little something, a little place for glaze to do something, you know? So feel free to just kind of go with the flow if that's what your tool is wanting to do. if you want to kind of challenge yourself and just see how skinny and how tall can I get this. At some point, if your finger won't fit in there, you can take a tool and drop it in. And you just come in here and do this. I've seen people like with a toothpick or something inside there when it's all done. I tend to just go ahead and put my pinky in there and then close it up. I just like to be able to feel what I'm doing.
No, like the middle one. Yeah.
And here at the end, it's going to start to get kind of twisted if you don't go super slow. It'll start to tweak, like kind of twist. I think I'm going to call that done. Oops. I don't personally love that triangle. Oh, I want that to go in right there. And it'll just be kind of up to you aesthetically what you prefer. There's no like, with bottles, there's no like they have to be this or that. It's just what you prefer. Okay, then it's that normal, say normal, it's the cut underneath, right? If you're doing off the hump. If you're doing off the bat, then you're done. And if you're doing off the bat, you can do a little bit of a cut back. I don't have there's no wooden cutback tool, but like if I wanted to, I could come in here and see if this will work. And I can do an undercut that makes that look even more dramatic at the bottom. And then it looks really impressive when that bottom's like this big around, you know, and then it goes out. You can do a lot of that from trimming. It makes it look like you're even better than you are. People think you threw it that way. And there's no need to tell them otherwise. Unless you're a potter, you probably don't even know. Some potters don't even know you can trim bottles like that. They don't think about it. Yeah. Clean, dry hands would be better, but here we go. There it is. And that's going to get turned upside down and trimmed and so on. All right, guys. Sorry that took so long. I thought it'd be a little bit quicker, but